to Vaughn. That's the only reason I'm here. Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back with our Survivor 37 David versus Goliath. David, yes, it says David now. Goliath fantasy game. We're back with Vaughn, who whooped us last year, even though his winner pick was Bradley. So how far does that really get you? But we are back. Vaughn, thank you again for joining us. I think, is this the third straight year you're doing it?
I believe that's correct. I think maybe it's the fourth straight season that I've done something. I think maybe the first time you guys had me do a boot list or something, but I'm happy to be back. I mean, I think that the fantasy game wouldn't be the same without Goliath here to attend with both of you two, David. So it's
walking Goliath over
privilege. Here. Yeah, exactly.
I do like that. We talk you up so much on this podcast anyway. So
I'm just going to lean into it. It's a little bit overdone, but I'm just going to lean into the Goliath imagery.
I don't know, man. It sounds like you got the dream going on over there, Alexa. I'm sitting here like it's really dark in my room because I can't afford electricity. That's the only light I can afford back there. So here we go. I've
got a green screen behind here.
I was about to say excellent camera placement.
Yeah, exactly. Fake like there's green behind me.
I love it. I love it. And maybe that's why I'm leaning a lot more towards the Davids here, Vaughn. So I'm assuming, you'll just try to take all of the Goliaths.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't want to tip my hand quite yet. We haven't even decided on the format yet.
That's true. We haven't
the draft. Do we not snake the draft? Always.
Last season we snaked it, and Vaughn won anyway.
Yeah, I think I'm pro snaking again. I think we should go with snaking.
I agree. I'll
support the snaking.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that maybe we could not snake it, and the person with the third pick gets to choose who gets the final two players.
Ooh.
Who the team is. But I think we actually, I won't spoil it, but I think we have maybe someone picked out, so I think it's better to snake it.
Yeah, and should we just spoil it like right off the bat?
Phil, let's
go for it.
Let's tell the fans who's getting our final two.
Yeah, so last year it was Joe, and Joe was a lot of fun on there. But Joe, we got to retire you because you finished last. I mean, if you would have had a better performance, maybe we would have brought you back again. So we're gonna have to kick you out there. But this season we're gonna go with Bradley because we go from one guy who's on the TV as a villain who's just yelling at everybody to another guy who's just on the TV yelling at everybody who's a villain. So why not have Bradley come in, get the
and we're gonna give him a bit of an advantage this time.
Well, Joe, we got to remember, Joe made it a little bit further in the game than Bradley, so we have to give Bradley triple the points instead of Joe, who only had double the points. I'm just taking shots at Bradley now. I'm sorry. But I didn't take any shots at him last season, so I got to make up for it. But we're going to give him triple the points on everything. So Bradley, no way he doesn't finish at least third place this year. And honestly, Joe almost beat me last year. My team was terrible. My best pick was Kellen. That was my best pick, which I love Kellen. But that was like seventh place.
You said that with the disdain was just dripping.
It's bad when your best pick is seventh place with three people. And when Joe had somebody go 3 spots further than me. It's not good.
Joe was coaching him up, man. He was out there on Twitter every single week trying to rally the troops.
He really was. And I mean, we didn't tell Bradley about this beforehand, so hopefully Bradley can live up to that hype. Like Joe was all in on that. He really was, and he was great. And he got the best, probably maybe the best character on the season last season, and then the ultimate underdog who somehow gets 4th place. So there you go. So Bradley,
I hope Bradley has a little bit of proficiency with memes because I feel like kind of a meme of his team with his photo could really go a long way. I think maybe next season Davey would be a strong contender for the 4th team, just based on his meme ability. Meme ability.
Have to work.
Also, Twitter fingers. I think Joe had a lot of fun being on Twitter. Bradley has a lot of fun being negative on Twitter. So I think this is a good fit.
Yeah. Exactly. And you always look for the most negative out of the people because positive, you don't want somebody really into their team. Like Joe was he was that coach who's also this is everything you've done wrong.
Tough love.
That's it. That's what you need. So anyway, this season, the way we're scoring is we're doing days lasted, which is always our go-to. A correct idle play is 3. We've knocked the winner down to 7. Individual immunity win is 2. MVP 3, LVP -2. And if you successfully use another advantage, that's 1. And we were trying to talk about that before the podcast. We were saying successfully used means it actually impacts who gets voted out of the game. It actually has a positive impact. Or if it's something that doesn't have to do with the votes, it's actually impacting it correctly, I guess would be the word. So we're talking the nullifier, extra vote, vote steal, whatever they're going to be throwing out there. There's so many of these things. Why just make it to idols? They're just worth 1 point because there's so many of them. They don't have as much of an impact as idols. But yeah, there we go. So that's the whole thing.
That was a very eloquent description, Phil.
I thought so. I had to wait for somebody to jump in there. Anyway, so now we have not picked the draft order. Last year, Vaughn destroyed us. He went first. I went third. I went Brendan and then Kellen. Those were my first 2 picks. So like, love both of them, but come on, I got to do better this year, right? I got to do better.
I got Dom on the way back in the late second.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah,
that's really, really rough. So how are we determining who picked when? How have we decided? How are we doing this?
In the past, we've done rock, paper, scissors, right?
Yeah.
I think all of our internet is safe enough where we can do it all at the exact same time. We could also
go in reverse order of last year.
Then I have to go first.
We could do that, yeah.
No, you wouldn't have to go first. You get first pick of which pick you want.
Oh, that's right. So I could, and I also got last place. So maybe I should do that.
I think that's fair.
I think that's fair. I think that's a nice consolation prize to how given how terrible your team was last year.
It was awful. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna take pick 3. I don't care. I'm gonna stick with where I was, and I'm gonna try to do better. So I'm gonna do pick 3, and if we're snaking, I'm ready to go.
Okay, I think that means Alexa, you get the second pick.
I will take the second pick.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
Tough. Okay.
You're the special guest. We want this to be your podcast.
Puts me in a tough spot. I sort of dug my own grave there.
You did.
So wait. So hang on. I totally cut there. What? Who?
Vaughn is going to have the first pick.
Oh, so we're in the same boat.
Second pick. Phil will have the third pick. Phil will have the fourth pick because we're snaking it. Goes back to me, back to Vaughn, etc., etc.
Vaughn just wants to do it the same way he did it last year. He's ready to beat down on us again.
It worked out well for you.
I think I would have liked the second pick. I think the second pick is nice.
Yeah. I liked having the third one here, though, because I'm going to show everybody that it was just one bad year, one bad week. Also, Alexa, could you please tell New York to stop?
Yeah, so I moved apartments recently again, and I purposely moved away from the hospital, but I live really close to the FDR highway, which is probably how all the ambulances get to said hospital that I removed myself from. So we'll have to deal with it. We're gonna have to deal with it, and that'll be my way of saying I disagree with everything that both of you have to say.
There you go. It just comes in at the right time. All right, well, let's get this going then, Vaughn. Why don't you kick us off? And I'm interested to see what props you have and stuff this time. So I know
yeah. Just one more. So, well, first, I guess I'll kick it off already with explaining the shirt, which is a repeat of the Game Changers attire. This is the shirt Zeke wore during the pregame of Game Changers, and Lirsa has brought it back for season 37. And what I can only imagine is a tribute to me. Because I haven't heard anyone talk about this and that she's like doing it because she's a Zeke fan or whatever. So I just assume that it's for me. And so I don't know if Lirsa is active on social media or not, but if she is, and if she could just confirm that, then that would be a nice ego boost for me. And I might consider, picking her earlier in the draft. But I'm not picking her first overall. I don't have a prop for this guy because I feel like in a lot of ways he reminds me of myself, except to sort of lean into Jeff Probst's cheesy David and Goliath juxtaposition. I feel like he really chose the route of the David, whereas even though we came from similar beginnings, I really chose the route of the Goliath, particularly with the podcasting. And that is Nick Wilson. First,
I thought you were going to say Johnny Nitro.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have actually also compared me to Johnny Nitro. So I understand where you're coming from there. But no, Nick, the redneck lawyer. I don't think that I've ever been both a redneck and a lawyer simultaneously. But I have been both a redneck and a lawyer at different times in my life. And my family, like Nick's, is originally from Kentucky. He chose to kind of go back to Kentucky and go help the little guy. I chose to go work for terrible, evil corporations in another better part of the country. So I think in a lot of ways, he sort of took the more noble path. But I like him a lot. I think he's super charming. You guys, I feel like, have been like kind of top 5-ish with him, but like a little low on him. So this is a little bit of a risk. I thought about taking a risk and maybe letting him drop to the second had I had a different pick. But I really, I always talk about in these podcasts about kind of the delta, the difference between someone's perceived ability in the game and their actual ability in the game. And to me, I think Nick has the largest delta by far this season, because I think that it has not been since Tocantins that we've had an adept Survivor player with an accent embracing the whole redneck thing. And, Donathan went kind of a long way last season, but he was a little bit of a joke in terms of his actual ability to play the game. And I think that Survivor players think in these archetypes a lot. I think that archetypes ebb and flow in terms of their threat level. And we can talk a little bit later on about which archetypes I think Survivor players find especially threatening right now. But I think it's pretty clear that the redneck is not threatening. And I think this is actually, you guys actually stated this in an earlier podcast. You were like, this guy has an accent. No one with an accent ever does well. I don't think that that's necessarily has to be the case. I think that he's a Survivor superfan. He's an RHAP patron. He's clearly a smart guy. He's going to lie about his profession, so people are not going to know that he's a lawyer or that he has an advanced degree or anything. He's going to act like he's like a counselor or a social worker for a law firm, which I think is a good pick because I think he can kind of bullshit enough, and if he knows things about the law, then it won't be suspicious. So anyway, I really think that he's someone people will sleep on, and I think that people will be, maybe comparing him to JT in their heads, the people that know the game. But JT now is so tied to his more recent terrible performances that I really just think the threat level of kind of the redneck, guy who's smarter than he looks is really low right now. And I think Nick has the game ability, the social ability to exploit that. And I also just say off the top that I'm leaning, despite the fact that I'm the Goliath of this fantasy game, I lean in the direction of the Davids. So when in doubt, I'm going to go with the David because my view is this is the first time in Survivor history where there have been two tribes and production and Jeff Probst want us to root for one of the tribes. As far as I know, someone can correct me in the chat or whatever, but I think this is the first time that you've had this like versus thing. Usually it's like, okay, hero, hustler, healer, you're supposed to identify with one based on your own personal characteristics, yada, yada. This time it's like literally like, here's a tribe of the underdogs who you're supposed to root for. And all the commercials are basically trying to promote that. And here's a tribe of douchebags who we don't want you to root for, who it'll be really fun to watch them fail. And so even though that doesn't necessarily mean that a David's going to win, I think that either based, production decisions or final tribal council, I think if there's a loose ball, I think it's going to go in favor of the Davids. So,
well, and this is what I kind of wanted to say here is wait, I'm echoing in some ways. Who am I repeating in? Okay, I'm okay.
Maybe plug and unplug.
Can you hear me?
Oh, you're back. We can hear you.
Sorry, I just wanted to say this. To Vaughn's point, David versus Goliath has a winner. Like David won in that story.
Right.
There was no story of heroes, healers, hustlers, or brain, brawn, beauty, or even old versus young back in Nicaragua. Like this is the first time where the winner was David. And maybe that's what's in my head is somehow a David's pulling this out. Because when I was doing the bootless game, I was leaning so far David. Like I think most of my top, other than maybe Dan, I think pretty much my entire like top 5 or top 6 was all Davids.
Yeah, and I think the Davids will have a great case to make in the final tribal about how they're a David and they can talk about their life story. And I think at the same token, I mean, some of these production decisions, like this first tribe we're hearing about, I would be shocked if the Davids lost that challenge, right? Because they're letting the Goliaths pick the competitors. I bet the advantage that they're giving the Davids in terms of choosing the route or whatever is going to be an enormous advantage. It's going to be really hard for them to fail. So I'm not trying to say that like, oh, production interference, like, oh, they're controlling the game. But I do think that all else equal, I think that like the viewers, the show, the players are going to feel a lot better about themselves if David, as he always should, wins at the end.
Well, you bring up a good point with that opening challenge. As you were describing that, the Goliaths go in with a disadvantage because they have the script flipped on them as soon as they pick the 2 weakest Davids.
Right.
So I don't know if it's technically an advantage for David, but it's definitely a disadvantage for the Goliaths because they're picking someone based on completely false information.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And I think we could see that, that played out. Now, the one thing, since I'm talking just broadly about the show, the one thing that worries me about David and Goliath is sort of a season theme is that they're clearly trying to push the antagonism of the tribes against each other and trying to make it kind of a visceral tribal team versus team mentality. And it's kind of old school in that way because it really, the first 10 seasons of Survivor were much more like the tribes hated each other and there was like an avatar of each tribe member that everyone just hated because he was loud and obnoxious and they couldn't wait to get him out. And that's fun, but I worry that in this era of like one tribe just basically pagonging the other based on like a very early advantage, like the Malolos last year or the healers at the merge, I worry that if they really try to cement this tribe versus that tribe and really try to like bring out the jingoism of the two tribes, then I feel like that could make it for more of a boring season post-swap.
I hear what you're saying, but I do think, though, the way that this is done, and the difference with the old school seasons is they didn't do swaps as often. It was just one here, one there. Yeah. They're starting with 20. They're probably swapping to 3 tribes at 18, I would assume. Or doing some sort of mix-up really early, and then they'll probably do another one that might go back to 2 tribes or stay with 3 tribes. But they do so many more swaps now that it's hard to kind of stick with that. But I do like that the David versus Goliath thing is more – I feel like it is more meaningful of a – you feel like you're the underdog, or you feel like you have to take them out. Because, with heroes, healers, and hustlers, it's like, well, yeah, Dr. Mike is a healer, but I like Dr. Mike, so why do I want to vote him out? Here, it's like you see Johnny Mundo and you're a David. You're like, well, I need to beat this guy. He's a professional wrestler.
Yeah. And I'll make one more point related to the theme and about Nick, and then I'll let y'all pick, I promise. But I do think that the theme has an effect on people when they lie or even tell the truth about their professions, right? Because I think that it's believable that Nick, the David, would be just like a social worker in Kentucky that is, loosely affiliated with law firms. It's less believable that someone is on the David tribe that is a successful attorney. So I think that the lie, his tribe identity actually helps him there. Whereas if someone on the other tribe, when you talk to people a bit later on, there's another attorney, for example, and if he wants to lie and say that he has like a more kind of blue collar job, and he's surrounded by all these people who are either celebrities or really at the top of their fields, then maybe that's a lie that's harder to pull off. So I think that's another interesting factor about the tribal theme.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I really do. Because, you have somebody like who she could lie and say she's not an MMA fighter. But she's an MMA fighter. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I wonder if she is going to lie about that. I haven't heard her say anything. Because I said this right when the cast was announced. I'm surprised she's not a Goliath, but it makes sense that they wouldn't want 2 professional wrestlers on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of the delineations are a little fuzzy. I still can't figure out why Alec is a Goliath, but whatever. That's always
he's handsome.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
The pretty people and the ugly people.
So you took Nick in the longest first pick of all time, which is good because in the preview he's got to get his slingshot ready.
Yep.
Which I've seen way too many times now, to the point I'm actually annoyed by it. I'm not gonna lie. Sorry, Nick.
Same.
But Alexa.
The cameramen were jumping up and down as soon as he said, "I got to get my."
They were so excited.
Oh, they're eating.
Probably just fed in that line, honestly.
Oh yeah.
No, they would never do that. Never do that. How dare ye? All right.
How dare you? All right. So with my second pick, I will try to keep this fairly quick. I'm going with Dan. I'm picking him a lot for longevity. I think going back to your conversation about archetypes, Vaughn, he looks like a Goliath. Everyone's going to assume he is your Goliath type. But when you listen to him talk, when you read these interviews, he's kind of a goofball. And he's a dad. He has these daughters. He's a little quirky. And that's not what you would expect from this Gainesville SWAT officer. So I think with him, he has the ability to relate to just about everybody. So even within the game, I'm very confident with him. Outside of the game, this guy, he's on Reddit, he's on Twitter, he's on Instagram. He is all over the internet. And I can't imagine someone who goes home early is going to be hyping up his game that much. So a little bit of interpretation there. But he has impressed me every single time I've read about him. He's super positive. Everyone has really positive reads on him. He stood out to me immediately as someone who I think is going to go really far. He's going to have a lot of allies. And he very well will and could have a target on his back. But I think he's going to seem more unassuming when he's standing next to Johnny Nitro and Alec. And I think people will see him as a SWAT officer and then see more of the dad side of him. So I'm not too nervous for him. I think he has a really, really good shot to go far.
Yeah, and this is why I decided to go third when you guys said that I could pick first. I decided to go third because I figured Alexa was going to pick Dan. And I like Dan, but I don't know if Dan's going to be the one who wins it. So I was like, she can have Dan. I know that's going to be your second pick. And then I also figured that if you were to take Dan, Vaughn, I think I knew who Alexa would also take. So I took a little bit of a chance there.
I haven't gotten that far on my second pick, so joke's on me.
Yeah, I thought about just totally sniping you and taking Gabby, but I didn't.
Well, I'm not going to. I'm not going to take Gabby.
Oh, wow. Okay, never mind.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
So since Vaughn didn't pull out props, I'll just sit here with my glasses on. I'm going to go with Gabby. as my first pick because obviously I'm going to go with Gabby. I picked her as my winner pick. I feel like she has longevity. I don't need to keep talking about Gabby because all it means is she's going to get Brendaned, and Gabby's getting 17th place on this season. But, some people just never learn their lessons. And then I have another prop, which I need to do for my second pick. So for my second pick, I'm going to put my glasses back on, and I'm going to take Christian as my second pick.
Wow. So, that was low-hanging fruit, but
how long did you plan this for? Wow.
Literally,
how many glasses did you have to buy?
I know, exactly. Unbelievable.
When I said, guys, I have to get up for a second, I have to go pick something up, it was just to go pick up my glasses because I hadn't even decided I was picking Christian second until I was like, you know what? If I can do that, I'm just going to put the glasses back
I am
on.
so incredibly disappointed that you used one prop for two people.
Oh, but how great is it that, now I have Gabby and Christian. So my glasses wearing friends. Let's go.
Wow. I had them too, but.
Yeah, but you know what?
Are there any other people with glasses? Anyone else?
Sorry.
Anyone else?
Maybe like reading glasses. Maybe we'll have to ask around in between picks and see.
Yeah, we need to find out. But you know what? I like this. I wasn't actually going to take Christian this early, but then the more that I think about Christian, like on that tribe with the start there, like Vaughn, what you were saying, like this is a guy who's a robotic scientist, which makes him like really successful in his field.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like he's on the Davids. So who's going to be scared of Christian? Like they might think of him as like a Cochran because he does look like Cochran. But aside from that, he can lie about what he is. He can just say he's a professor at a college. Like that doesn't mean you're like going to be good at stuff if you're a professor at a college. Like
he looks like he's like 24, so that would be like the youngest professor ever.
Also, he could just say he's a student. He's a TA somewhere.
Yeah.
So I really do. I like Christian's chances to go really far in this game, and like I could see him, Nick, and Gabby teaming up, and Nick would have been the third. Like he was like my third out of the group here. So. Like these were, I think like the first four picks are kind of who I would have picked if I had the first four picks. Mm-hmm. It's like, that means Gabby and Christian are going to be disasters because I picked them on my team. So sorry, everybody.
I guess I'll just briefly run down each of those people with just sort of like my hot take on each one. So I had all three also in like my like little top tier. So I think that they're all like reasonable picks that I think everyone is going to kind of put in the top tier. I think Dan, I agree. I think he's like pretty clearly an in-gamer. I think what sets him apart from sort of like the typical kind of like cop is that he used to be overweight. He shed those pounds. He's got this nerdy side, as Alexa said. I think he's going to be able to relate to more people. I like what he talked about, how he's like a millennial generation of cop and how it's not all about, busting heads anymore, but it's about kind of like getting to know the community and that kind of thing. The only downside with Dan is like, yeah, he'll be kind of a target at the merge, and then he doesn't really have any survivor knowledge, and that's typically a little bit of a mark. I mean, it doesn't necessarily kill you. Just ask, Earl Cole et al. But I do think that, when you're talking about a top tier pick or a first round pick, I like to pick people who know the game when I can. And so the only thing that scares me about Dan is, does his lack of survivor knowledge end up hurting him because he doesn't know of a move he can make or he doesn't think of a way out once he gets to the merge. But that said, I like him a lot. And then with Gabby, I like her a lot. I had her, I think, ranked maybe like third overall on my board. I think that she's like, I think a lot of people are picking her. I think she may even be like the chalk pick. I think that like she's probably, from what I can tell, the most popular winner pick right now. And I can see why. I mean, I'm a sucker for all of that kind of like social psychology. It's all about emotional intelligence talk. And she was giving a lot of that to Josh Wigler. And it was really, and I'm a sucker for that, as evidenced by my pick a couple seasons ago for Rourke. But that's kind of her downside, right? Like kind of her floor. I know you guys were mocking my ceiling floor commentary.
We're just trying to make sure we said it right.
Yeah. I think her floor, I guess, is maybe a little lower just because sometimes the people that are all caught up in kind of the emotional psychology and are so smart can come across as a little too intellectual. And I got that vibe a little bit from her. I thought about actually ranking her number one overall. But part of me just thinks, is this Rourke all over again? Is she going to kind of fail a little bit to relate to people right off the bat because she's so smart? So that's, I think, her downside. But at the end of the day, I think she's maybe as likely to be the winner as anyone. And then lastly, Christian, I had a little lower, but still the top tier. I mean, I think that Probst flagged him as one of the reasons to watch the show, which probably means he's unlikely to be the winner, but is likely to last like a really long time. I think also, unfortunately, there's a gender bias in terms of finding idols, right? This has like been talked about a lot by a lot of people. And so given that our scoring system rewards idol finding, you're probably, when in doubt, better off picking men. I mean, as bad as that sounds, though, that said, I guess women have won more challenges, individual immunity challenges lately. So maybe that's in the other direction. But Christian is who I was talking about when I was talking about archetypes, because I really think, when Cochran played the first time, there was this thought that like, oh, don't worry about the nerd. I mean, he's never going to be able to keep up. He's a total joke. And Cochran completely reversed that. And I think now you're seeing in Survivor, and really for the Big Brother fans, you're seeing this in Big Brother too, this kind of almost overhyping of the nerd, where they've become almost the biggest, most threatening archetype. And so then the question for Christian is, if he's going to be perceived as kind of a Cochran, does he have the chops to back it up? He's definitely a smart guy. I think he's funny. I think he's self-deprecating. But like, there aren't that many Cochrans out there. And is he going to be able to kind of draw people to him like Cochran, or is he going to fall short and be kind of like a diet Ryan Ulrich or something like that?
A diet Ryan Ulrich. Love it.
Yeah.
Great value.
Yeah. And so, and there are a couple of things, like one thing, I'll try to bring out quotes when I can, but like one thing that Christian said about Carl kind of turned me off. He said, like, I'm going to see how he responds to my general antics. If he doesn't respond well, I'm out on him. And it's like, number one, like, people who refer to their personality as my general antics, that's like a little bit of a weird red flag that suggests maybe you don't necessarily have like a A+ social game. And then secondly, like, attitudinally, like, oh, if they're not like buying what I'm selling immediately, they got to go, is not necessarily the best way to approach a social game like Survivor. So I don't know. I think that like Christian in all likelihood is going to be someone who like finds 2 or 3 idols, is a confession hog, and who is in the finale, I think, in all likelihood. But I think he has a little bit lower of a floor than some of the other people, because I really could see him being kind of like weird, basically.
Did you make, or did he make those same general antics comments at everybody, or is he only doing these to Carl?
He made weird comments about everyone, but that one was especially that was the only time he said that specific thing about Carl, and so that's why I flagged that. I don't know. I don't think it's anything against Carl. I guess. The good thing is
Carl seems to have a pretty chill demeanor, and he'll probably react neutral to positive to just about everything.
Yeah, I think so. But it's just a weird way to approach someone and be like, oh, well, like, I saw them in Ponderosa, and like, I'm gonna approach him, but if he's not all about me, then like, F him.
Yeah. And I think, though, the one thing that works for Christian here is if you look at his initial tribe, there's not many people who I think would be able to gather enough people to turn on him. Like, I feel like from the start, like, him and Gabby look like an alliance right off the bat.
Yeah.
You can throw in maybe Lears. You can throw in Nick.
Yeah.
Like, who's going to try to turn it on
Yeah, you
Christian?
got some weirdos. You definitely got like a weirdo, critical mass.
Yeah. You like let's say Davey tries to turn it. Well, I feel like nobody's going to listen to Davey. And if Elizabeth tries to turn it, I don't feel like that many people are going to listen to it. So, like, I feel like there's so many ways for
people have nerdy qualities too. Like Davey and Elizabeth, they both have a nerd side too. So who's to say they're not going to align with Christian? I mean, I guess I agree with you. First of all, I don't think he'll have a problem clicking on people with his initial tribe. I guess, one thing you could say about the Davids, even though I've been hyping them, is people with like a little bit more winner upside. They also are probably going to lose a bunch of challenges in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. And so these people that are a little bit weaker physically on David, I think you have to bump down a little bit. And that is I think Gabby will probably be fine. I think she seems like fairly athletic. But there are a few people, maybe Christian included. It's kind of hard to know. We don't have very, very many videos this year. It's really kind of a dearth of raw material here to kind of gauge people's, awkwardness physically. So who knows? Like, Christian could actually just be like a really athletic, gifted guy. But for people like him, I worry about, do they have 3 or 4 votes before a swap? And does David lose like 3 of the 4? So one other thing I mentioned too.
Yeah, I think that we're only going to get 2 votes before a swap. I feel like that's kind of been like their general thing. And I feel like those first 2 votes, there's going to be people who completely stick out as just, we can't have them around. And I don't think Christian or Gabby is going to be that person. And I also think, like what you were saying with that first challenge, I almost feel like the second challenge could be something where we see the Davids win because it's heavily favoring the Davids. Maybe it's heavier on the puzzle or something, not as physical. And so the Davids have a better chance to win. The Davids pull out the win. It's kind of like when the women won in Vanuatu and in Amazon. That was a huge deal. And I could see that happening again here. The Goliaths have to go, and then the second challenge, the Davids lose. And by that point, you're 6 days in. Christian and Gabby have made their relationships with everybody they need to. And you know, there's an obvious boot at that point. So I think this is going to be a weird season with at least in the first episode.
The challenges are definitely going to, the first couple challenges are definitely going to be weird because, I mean, if you're a network, if you're a producer for a show like Survivor and you get paid what they pay, you're smart enough to realize that if you create a David and Goliath season and if all of your promotional content is favoring the Davids and then you roll out 2 insanely physical challenges, then like, you can probably assume that like the result is not going to be what you want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
That's a good point on the challenges. They'll probably have some, just a good variation. And they've been really good the past couple seasons, so hopefully they keep that up.
Alexa, who's your second pick?
My second pick, I am going with Allison. Vaughn, I'm going to counter your Dan doesn't have the Survivor knowledge with Allison, whose answer to 3 words to describe you was hero, healer, and hustler.
I love that. I love
that.
That
was so funny. Yeah. I read that and I was like, I'm done. Like this is who I'm picking for literally everything.
Yeah.
I am extremely biased towards her. I'm a huge fan of her. I think she doesn't take herself very seriously, but I think she's a huge fan of the game. She's a Goliath. I'm assuming because she's a doctor, but I know that they put people on certain tribes for certain reasons. But I like her being on the Goliath tribe because I don't think she has the top 3 strongest personality on that tribe. And I think early on that's really good. And I think she clearly knows the game. I think she'll know to either lay low for a little bit. I think she'll be serviceable in challenges. Like you said, Vaughn, we can't really tell what people's general awkwardness is because we haven't seen many videos. But I'm a huge fan of her. I think she has a really good chance to go far. And I hope she breaks this whole girls not finding idols issue we have going on.
Yeah. And I will one-up you, Alexa. I don't think that Allison has one of the top 7 personalities on that tribe, which is good. Which is
good. Which is fantastic. Like, wasn't it with Adam who said you want to be the most normal person on the beach?
And that's her. Like she's the most normal. She's the most. I mean, you have Natalie and Mike who are both going to be huge personalities. Based on what Dan's been doing all over social media,
I haven't even said Johnny Nitro yet.
Johnny Nitro. I'm going from reverse up. No, Johnny Nitro, Alec, Angelina. Like I think Allison's one of those contestants. So I feel like it's going to get one confessional every episode for the pre-merge, and then have like one episode where she has like this huge thing. And I think she's going to be in it for a long time. I really do. But I feel like she's just going to consistently be a face on your screen, not be a hog like maybe a Christian or a Johnny Nitro, but she'll be there every week to give her 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I like her a lot. I mean, she's honestly one of these people that seems like they were created in a lab to be a really good Survivor player. It's like she's like smart, she's like hardworking, she's clearly athletic, but not too athletic. She's like very much reminds me of Kim Spradlin. I think that I'll point out 2 red flags, not to like rain on Alexa's parade.
Rain it.
Okay. One is she seems really rigid about creating a Black Widow brigade. She mentions it not
She's
just
a little into that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a totally fine strategy. And I think she could deploy it really well on that tribe. Don't get me wrong. And in fact, I think she might end up deploying it successfully based on who's on the tribe. I mean, not to sort of go into fan fiction, but she seems really rigid about it. Like when she's talking about herself, she mentions it. When Josh Wigler asks her about like every other person, she mentions it either like, oh, well, they're not going to be in my Black Widow brigade, or, oh, yeah, she's going to be in my Black Widow brigade. It's like that's the lens in which she's viewing the entire game. And I think it's like, it's a little risky to go in with such a hard and fast strategy when I think the best players in Survivor remain really flexible and kind of go with the flow. I think the ones that kind of try to impose a previous game plan really rigidly on the game tend not to do as well. So that's something to watch out for. But I don't think necessarily it'll doom her because I think on the one hand, it could just work. And secondly, if she's like not picking up good vibes from the women and she doesn't think it's going to work, I think she is smart enough to kind of adjust on the fly. So, but it is something to note that it was like a little weird. And then secondly, I worry a little bit about like her social awareness in 2 ways. So 2 things happened, both related to Jeff Probst at Ponderosa. One is that she apparently freaked out when Jeff Probst showed up.
She did.
And was like
She
super
like
excited.
nerded out.
Yeah, and I like her excitement. I would do the same thing, I'm sure. But to me, it's like, you kind of want to play your cards close to the vest. I think in Survivor, you don't necessarily want to really flaunt your superfan status in Ponderosa until you see like who's on your tribe and whether or not that's going to play well. So to me, it shows like a little bit of a lack of kind of emotional regulation, that you're not able to kind of like hem it in. And I feel like emotional regulation is kind of like one of the most important social skills. Like whether you're happy or sad, kind of like bringing it in is really important, especially if you're getting rained on. And so that is a little bit of a red flag that she wasn't able to kind of like keep her shit together, if you will. And then secondly, with Jeff Probst, and this is maybe more of a red flag. And I know I'm saying like a lot of negative things about Allison. I actually love Allison. I think she could like easily be a winner. I think I had her like maybe 4th overall. But then the last thing is, so when Jeff revealed their tribes, Allison said, like, protested and said, like, what the F? Like, why am I on the Goliath side? Like, I worked so hard to get where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I missed this.
Yeah. And then Jeff was like, oh, well, Pat, how about you explain your background? He like kind of owned her really publicly and was like, Pat, how do you explain your background? Pat's like, oh, like, my mom, paralysis and yada, yada, and like super hard upbringing and yada, yada. And then he's like, Allison, like, would you explain your background? And she's like, well, my dad was a doctor and I grew up in this nice suburban neighborhood and had access to all this money and yada, yada. And then Jeff was like, see, that's why you're a Goliath. And so to me, that's like a red flag on a few levels, right? Like one, like why verbalize that? Just like, if you think that, keep to yourself. I'm sure a lot of the Goliaths were like a little bit perturbed that they were not a David. Like number one, keep that to yourself. Number two, like you probably, if you have a lot of privilege like that and your parents, one of your parents was a physician, like you should probably have like a little bit more self-awareness about the privilege that granted you. Like, like it's not great. It's not great.
I wonder if this is going to make TV. I completely missed this part.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't actually know if it was like filmed or whether it was just like done in Ponderosa and they were just like discussing it. I don't know. It would be great if it was on the premiere. I would love to see her get like, it would be a great moment to see her get shot down, even though I like her a lot. So those are small moments. And like, I think ultimately, like when you're critiquing these people, in case Allison's out there, honestly, like our criticisms of these people based on such a limited amount of information really says a lot more about us, like the critic, than it does about them, right? Like the people we identify with and we like is really just like about us. And like I think that I in particular was just rubbed the wrong way by her reaction to that. And so now I'm saying that that's going to affect her in the game, but who the hell, like, what do I know, right? I mean, I am the greatest fantasy player of all time. Like, what do I really know?
Captain Goliath over here.
So that's my humility. But those are some red flags about Allison. I thought that was just kind of weird. I mean, I could totally see her going on like a Parvati, Black Widow Brigade / Kim Spradlin run and being considered one of the greatest winners of all time, and then I'll like eat crow or whatever. But they don't have a whole lot of opportunities to interact with each other in Ponderosa, and for her to have like 2 weird moments like that make me a little bit wonder.
Well, and I want to say that too, like with Allison, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't know that about that. But I always and like that rubs me the wrong way too, because I always like rich people who are like, I have no money, I can't afford that, and like here's like somebody who literally is like sleeping on couch to couch while you're living like in like a $2,000 apartment. You're saying that to them, but like being out of touch with the fact of just because you worked hard to get to that point doesn't mean that your life was hard necessarily. And
I guess in her defense, like the David versus Goliath categorization is like really kind of weird. It's like you can be born a David and become a Goliath, but you probably can't like go from Goliath to David. Like it's a little bit weird, right? CBS is taking some liberties with this, so in her defense, but I think
you also don't want to be a Goliath, as we.
That's what I was just going to say. That's the big but there. She doesn't want to be a Goliath because she, as a Survivor player, she knows how bad that looks for her. So I don't know if this was played up and maybe she just did it poorly. I wonder if it'll make it on TV. But I think that when you find out, like, I'm on the tribe of bad guys, essentially, because Goliath was a bad guy. When you're on the tribe of bad guys, you're like, oh wait, like I need to be like, no, that I don't belong here. And then she ends up making it even worse for herself. So I don't know if I don't think it's so much the illusion of like, oh, I've had such a hard life. I think it's more of I don't want to be on this tribe. This is really bad for me.
Yeah, I do love when Jeff owns people though, so I hope it makes it on.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great. I mean, I think that if I was mad though, I think my defense would be like, what? I'm a Goliath, but I help people for a living. I'm a physician. It wouldn't be like, F you, I'm such a hard worker. It's like, okay, like, kind of like a weird, like, you know, patting herself on the back. I don't know. But ultimately, I think at the end of the day, just like shut your mouth during those situations. You're on a television show. Like, just play it cool.
Yeah.
And I think playing it cool is like a really important aspect of Survivor. And so if she's not willing to do that, maybe that'd be bad. But at the same time, she's got a lot going forward too.
Yeah. All right. So who are you picking then, Vaughn? Who's someone better than else?
Oh, I mean, so many people. So many people left. Okay, so I actually do have my winner pick is left. So
okay.
Nick is not actually my winner pick, though. I think he could easily win. I knew that he would probably not be back to me, whereas I knew this person likely would. So it worked out. So the winner, in case anyone was wondering, of Survivor 37, and if you don't want to be spoiled, it's not an actual spoiler, but I know the show so much that you're basically spoiled. The winner, drum roll please, is Angelina. Yeah, Angelina. Yeah. So you guys
she's our merge boot.
You guys are sleeping again on a Stanford graduate. This is the second time. First, Adam complete sleeping on him despite being a friend of the podcast, and now you guys are having her as the merge boot. So I think, unlike Gabby, both are very smart, but I think Angelina, in contrast, has a few things going for her. One, she seems like a lot more relatable. I think she's less likely to fall into the like I'm super successful, went to fancy school, really smart trap as Gabby is, because first of all, she says like really bluntly like, yeah, that's my resume. I have a good resume, but that's not who I am. You know, that's some cool shit I did, but that's not who I am. And I think that's a really important perspective. Like, I think that she comes from a little bit more of kind of like a middle-class background. I think that she's got a little bit more, I think she's just a little bit more with it and a little bit more humble about it. And I think that she's going to be able to relate to more people as a result. So like normally like being a student body president in a university would be a super big red flag. And I say that as a politician. Like, I don't know if you guys remember who the student body presidents were at Miami, but like it's usually pretty weird people that want to do that, right? Because it's like
I don't know them.
It's like a lot of work. It's like a lot of work and like no real privilege. You know, it's like you don't really get any power or anything out of it, and you don't get paid, but like you have to do a bunch of shit. You know, so it's like usually it really attracts kind of weird people. And so she, I think, was like the first Latina student body president at Stanford, which, you know, and some people might find impressive. I find it like a little weird why she'd want to do that. So that is a red flag. But I thought her like extended riff about like Sandra, how Sandra was the queen and she was going to be the prime minister, and Sandra was going to do like all the royal shit and she was going to be like the in charge of policy. I thought that was like amazing and like super, super clever and super funny. And I think she's like high energy. I think she's self-deprecating. I think she's self-aware. And even obviously a few people in Ponderosa said she seems a little high maintenance, and people said like, oh, like seem like the staff think she's high maintenance. That's certainly a red flag, and that does mean that she has a little bit of a lower floor, I think she actually could be like, you know, the merge boot, or could be someone who was like late pre-merge if those kind of like flashes of a little bit of an attitude come out. But I'm going to lean in, and I think that she has, I think, the smarts, and I think the social ability, and I think the personality to go the distance.
Yeah, I'm so glad you took Angelina. Thank you. Because now I thought I was going to like take her at the end and be like, okay, I have to take the merge boot of the season. But in this
I would have grabbed her. I wouldn't have let her drop to the end.
Yeah.
In this alternate reality Vaughn's living in, she wins. I mean, that's a great alternate reality. And I'm pretty sure that also is the one where Kelly Wigglesworth won season 1. So like it's very different reality here.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I do agree with what you're saying about her. She has a lot of upside. Like you keep saying this upside down, floor ceiling thing.
Right.
Her ceiling is really, really high. But I do think that if she's being seen as high maintenance, I just think that at some point that catches up.
Yeah, by the staff. That's another thing. It's by the staff.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a red flag. But I just didn't get any of that. I think just listening to her, she's just so clearly very charming and very warm. And so, like, maybe she was faking it for the interviews, but as long as she can fake it for 39 days, I think she could be in good shape. So anyway, I'm happy to have her. I think, you know, that's why I didn't pick her number 1 overall. I know you guys were lower on her, but I think that, you know, we're however many picks in, 6 picks in or whatever. I think that she may be kind of like the last person on my board who I actually think could win. So kind of in the late second, this is where I picked Dom. I think that last year
that went pretty well for you.
That went pretty well. I'm actually great at picking runners up. I think my last few winner picks were like Brad Culpepper, Chrissy. I actually did pick Bradley, but I was very high on Dom. So maybe that's a bad sign for Angelina and or Nick. But okay, so I'm picking her, and then here comes the prop for the first round, first pick in the third round.
Drum roll.
Here we go. Elizabeth Olsen.
Yes.
Gentlemen.
I love her.
Thank God the Halloween pop-up stores were open because I was able to get this number for a very, very reasonable price. I did not wear it during the birth of my son 2 weeks ago, but maybe for the next one, if my head shrinks a little bit, I can keep it on. Because, you know, they make you wear the scrub hat because my wife also had a C-section and Elizabeth had a C-section. They make you wear the little scrub hat. So I feel like as long as, you know, maybe if I could put the brim down or something like that, it could double as scrubs. We'll have to ask.
Your wife did not, to clarify, your wife did not wear that hat.
She didn't. I just bought this hat. Oof, but I don't think. I'm not sure 2 weeks ago that our the Halloween pop-up store was even open. I'm not sure there was even an opportunity for her to do that. Yeah, so Elizabeth, amazing, right? She's awesome. Amazing. How can you not like her?
Huge
yeah, so she's the best. So I don't necessarily think that she's going to win the game, but I was afraid that she wouldn't come back to me, so I have to take her here, especially now since I paid like $6.99 for this hat. So yeah, I think like she's a lifelong fan. She's coming in perspective with like as a mom. She's like got a little bit of a country flair to her, which I think gives her a little bit upside, like Nick, that people I think may underestimate her, even though she does know the game and she is a smart person. I think people will kind of view her as someone who's not as smart and not as with it. So I really think she kind of has, like, going back to kind of the Delta argument between perceived and actual ability, I think that she's like a potential wolf in sheep's clothing where she could be ready to really slit some throats, but I think people are going to view her as kind of like the country mom for the part of the game or in a post-swap situation. I feel like she wouldn't necessarily, like if the Davids get down in the numbers and she's kind of swap effed on some tribe. She's not someone who the Goliaths are going to feel like they need to pick off. She's not going to be seen as some sort of threat. She can kind of just turn on the country thing. But ultimately, how could you not, pick someone who wore a cowboy hat during birth, who owns a raccoon hat, and who referenced Big Tom in her questionnaire? It's a no-brainer.
There you go.
She also stuck out her middle finger during the
yeah, right.
photo, which is like the game over best thing anyone's ever done in a cast photo.
She's the great. I mean, I should get fantasy points retroactively for that move. I mean, that was amazing.
We should make that a prop bet. Like, he sticks their middle finger in the
Yeah, I mean, obviously the risk with her, right, is that, like, does she have a level lower than 11? Maybe not.
That's the big
question.
So it's like, she definitely has a low floor. Like, she could easily be a pre-merger. But man, oh man, if she lasts for a while, I think she single-handedly, there are a few people on this cast that I think are great casting choices. And overall, I'll just say, I think this cast is amazing. And I think the age diversity and the racial diversity and everything actually made it a lot easier for me to come up with these fantasy rankings. I don't know about y'all, but like a lot of times, like including in Ghost Island, I was like, who is Chelsea and who is Morgan? And like, what's the difference between this person and that person? Whereas here, I feel like almost everyone in the cast has like kind of a distinct thing going for them about them. So there are several people on the cast, I think, who, if they last a while, could really make the season. I think that part of the problem of Ghost Island is like we really got unlucky with the boot order, right? Like so many amazing people went out early, and then we kind of like were left with some people that were a little bit more boring. I think this season they kind of learned their lesson, and I think that the cast is a lot more resistant to kind of a bad boot order. But that aside. Elizabeth is great, and I feel great about my team now. I could walk away from the computer screen now, and I could be happy with my teim.
Well, goodbye then. Bye.
It was great, guys. It was
good talk. On that note,
yeehaw to you.
I really like Elizabeth. I mean, I think that Elizabeth is much like a Debbie, where she's loud and everything. Maybe she has more self-awareness than Debbie. Maybe she doesn't. But really, what it came down to with Debbie in Debbie's first season, and people forget this, like people just couldn't trust her, and she was actually kind of threatening. Like, Debbie did such a good job. Yeah, she did such a good job on her original tribe that she kept her and Joe in the game and got Peter and Liz out of the game. And, like, people underestimate Debbie and say, like, oh, Debbie was just crazy and she was whatever. Because in Game Changer, she was just crazy and whatever.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
I think Elizabeth has a lot of that Debbie-type potential where it's like, look at me, I'm just zany. Don't worry about me. And next thing you know, she's in 7th or 8th place. And you're like, wait a second. If she gets to the end, would she actually win this? Can she surround herself with Joe Del Campo and somebody else who nobody wants to vote for at the end? Like, could Elizabeth do that? And I think that Elizabeth could be seen as like a real threat. I would have taken her if she was around on the back end here. So that was a good pick. I'm glad you brought the hat. It's now going to blind us the rest of the time because whenever it does get the reflection, it does hit the screen. It is bright.
Happy to. Anytime.
There you go. So Alexa, now who's your third pick? Do
All
you
right,
have somebody
number
better than Elizabeth?
3. Phil, you probably saw this coming, and Vaughn, I'm actually looking forward to hear you absolutely destroy him.
I'm ready.
Because I see him in my like
If
winner
it's the person
section.
who I think it is, I'm ready to destroy him.
It's Jeremy.
It is. Yes.
Destroy him.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
I'm really liking him, and I feel like kind of a lone wolf on him. I feel like, Phil, you're kind of iffy on him, not positive, not negative. I'll like proactively try to destroy him for you. He's kind of has that Christian thing going where Christian's like, oh, my general antics. Jeremy's like, I'm a nutcase. Get ready.
Yeah.
And I am just not seeing said nutcase. I'm seeing a very even-keeled, well-tempered, extremely smart guy who everyone has a pretty good vibe on. And I am just waiting for him to become a Pat Bolton. So I'm nervous, but everything he has shown me, except for one thing, tells me he can win this game. But the problem is he's really loving this one thing.
Yeah, so I actually think that the context here is that you are with the masses on this, I think. I think if Phil doesn't like him, I think Phil and I are actually the one on the island. I think if you look at like the boot list game and you look at some of the picks, I think he's actually a pretty popular winner pick. And I think a lot of people I've seen online, like on Reddit and stuff, have been picking him. So I actually think that like maybe he's not top tier, but I actually think this is a reasonable place to take him. That said, I personally have him really low, and I may be an outlier overall. I personally am not buying it. So I think generally when people tell you that they're a nutcase, you believe them. Because I feel like he's got a lot more life experience living his life than we know about him, right? He's seen like 40 years of a sample size, and we've only seen a couple of interviews. So I agree with you that he doesn't necessarily seem, super weird in his interviews, but I think that there's kind of a weirdness lurking there. I also, it's funny how you have so few things to go on and you really latch on to one thing. One thing I really latch on to is like he says his claim to fame is that he's passed the bar in 3 states. This is really bizarre to me as an attorney because number one, it's a weird thing to brag about because honestly, it's not that difficult to pass the bar. Most states have like 80% plus pass rates. So people do fail occasionally. I think that there are like a lot of famous people like maybe Hillary Clinton or something like that failed the bar. So it's not unheard of. People do fail. That doesn't mean they're dumb, yada, yada. But at the same time, the vast majority of people pass the bar. And if you pass one bar, you're really likely to pass a second or third. It's not something that's like equally hard each time. It's like if you're limboing with a limbo bar, it's like I've limboed from this length and then I tried the same distance a second and third time and I passed it each time. It's like, okay, like the first time, sure, but like the second, third time, okay. So I thought that was a weird thing to brag about. Also, I don't know. Someone needs to do a little bit more research on this. I feel like New York, New Jersey, and or Georgia, the 3 states that he's barred in, one of them should have reciprocity. I don't think you should be having to take the bar 3 separate times. But that's just like a nerdy attorney point. That's like a little bit confusing to me. Secondly, and this is also specific to me as an attorney, I also did some Facebook stalking or some just general LinkedIn stalking and saw that he is a staff attorney at a law firm in New York that is like known as being particularly douchey, which is kind of a red flag. So this firm, I won't name the firm, it's not necessary. But
now I'm going to go creep on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you can creep on LinkedIn. But the firm has like a really weird reputation. It's the only firm that's located basically like around the 20s in New York, basically. Most of them.
Gramercy?
Yeah, most of them are like either in Midtown or the financial district, and it's not. And the reason it's not is because it tries to cultivate kind of like a cool, hip image where they all wear like T-shirts to work.
Murray Chill, it's a thing.
But the flip side is that they like work harder than any other law firm. And it's like super bare bones operation where they don't really have very much of a staff. And it's like really the office space is like very bare bones. It's really weird. It's like the Spirit Airlines or something like that of like law firms. So that probably like actually doesn't give you any insight into his personality whatsoever, but it is one of the few things I know about him, and it makes me weirded out. So that's really about it. I mean, people have been getting good vibes from him. A few of his answers were weird, and also like I just think that going back to the kind of the perceived threat level, it's not great to be a black guy named Jeremy C. Considering. It's only been a couple seasons because the last season that they watched in full is 35. So it's like pretty fresh in their memory that another black guy named Jeremy C, who seemed like pretty sharp or whatever, won. And so going back to the archetypes thing, I don't know. To me, he gives off enough of kind of like a weird vibe that I question his ability in the game. And combined with that, with the fact that I think that people are going to think he's going to be good at the game or perceive him as a threat, either physically or socially or intellectually or whatever. I'm not sure if he's going to lie about the attorney thing or not, actually.
I think he recently said that he was going.
Yeah, but unlike Nick, I think that like he's a Goliath, right? So if he tries to lie, he's got to be really careful, because if he says that he's like, you know, a carpenter like Wendell, then people are going to like be like, oh, you're a Goliath carpenter. Are you like Jesus Christ? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like mixed on Jeremy. I don't know. I could see him going either way. I think I put him at like 10th in the boot list. I feel like he's just gonna land like right in the middle. There he is. But you know who I really
he could be pre-merge. I think he could be pre-merge.
I'll
call my shot. I think he could be pre-merge.
You know who can't ever be pre-merged that I'm really surprised is still around? I don't think they can ever be pre-merged because they're so unsuspecting. They're just like nobody's expecting them to do that well. I got Carl right here.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
I think Carl is. I'm not even kidding. Like I was telling Vaughn beforehand, I was trying to find props, but all my desk is surrounded with is books. But what does that say right there? It says The Big Sleep. That's Carl, man.
Right here.
Man,
that's Carl.
That's props ever.
I thought you were gonna bring a tow truck in.
Why would I bring a tow truck in? No, but I think he really is a sleeper. Like more people are on Jeremy, more people might be on Dan, or these are like more vocal people. Even Carl's like answers, they were very like, I know the game of Survivor, but I'm going to give you nothing. Like this is what I'm giving you. And I think he really likes Survivor. I think he's just so unassuming. Like here's a guy, he's just a truck driver. He's a little bit older. He's what, 41. He's from Texas. Like maybe he's gonna have a southern drawl. I actually haven't heard him speak yet.
He does.
Yeah, they called him Cowboy.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. So like and he's starting on a tribe with 2 other people from Texas. And I think that he can really get along with the Goliaths because I think he's just going to be like a calmer person around. I love Carl. I love that I got him here. I think this is great. I also love that I just got to put the Big Sleep up in front of my computer screen here. I think this is great.
My hat maybe could have actually doubled for Carl now that I think about it.
There you go. That's true.
All right, go get Phil.
Yeah, I know. My next one's tough. There's 3 people that I'm stuck between. I don't know which one I want to do. Oh, my gosh. I should have done second pick. This is hard. Yeah, I'm going to do Natalie. I'm going to take Natalie right here.
There it is.
I feel like it might be a little early, but I don't know if she's going to get back to me. So I'm going to take her here. I feel like she has the biggest upside out of a lot of the people left. I feel like Davey and Johnny Mundo, you can like see like as high as they're probably going to go. Like they're not going to go that far. I could see like maybe Natalia, Kara and Alec I'm staying away from. So like there's other people whose names I just can't remember as I'm going through here. But that's like, I don't know. I just feel like Natalie has the biggest upside out of so many of those people.
It's a good choice.
Yeah, I think that those are both good picks. I'm in on Carl. I agree. I mean, I think that we're at the point in the draft now where like, you know, most of these people are probably not going to win, but you know, you get a lot of points, especially now that we've reduced the point total for winners. You get a lot of points for people that just stick around. And Carl to me is like a perfect sort of like Rick Wilson mixed with Keith Nail type thing going on, where it's like, why would you ever vote this guy off? Like in the early days of the Davids, he's going to be good enough at the challenges where he's not going to be a threat, even though he's an older guy. And then once he gets to the swap, why would you target him? And then once you get to the merge, why would you target him? He's just going to last and last and last. And he's going to be affable and he's not going to get on anyone's nerves. So to me, I think he's got like at least like 35, you know, maybe 33 days in him.
Yeah,
but he's good.
Yeah, I have him sitting on the jury. Like I know, Phil, you had like Nick like branded onto the jury. That's where I have Carl. So that's a good pick.
I don't know though, because like everybody forgets Keith Nail was 1 immunity challenge away from winning Survivor San Juan del Sur. Like he would have won San Juan del Sur. He was so well liked on that jury. The jury was a bunch of guys who had been friends with him the whole time. Wes was there. That was an auto vote. Like he would have won that season.
But that's like an unlikely. If that did happen, like you could probably do like a million simulations of the season, and he probably wouldn't have won very many.
But I think that Carl could win on his own merit better than Keith could win on his own merit. Like I think Carl. I think Carl's probably going to be a better player than Keith. Like, there's nobody who's going to say Keith Nail is a great Survivor player, but Keith Nail could have won Survivor twice. If Jeremy Collins gets voted out and him and Wentworth are able to push it, he could win 31 as well. I mean, that we could be looking at a world where Sandra and Keith are the only 2-time winners. Okay, yeah. So I just want everybody to realize that.
Yeah, and then
so I think Keith has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I'm in on Keith for sure. I think he's a great pick here. I mean, Natalie is, I think, probably a totally fine pick here too. I just think that she, to go back to the ceiling and floor thing, she has the biggest variance of anyone in the cast, right? Because you could totally see her in the finale, a confessional hog, almost like the new Cerie. I mean, you can totally envision that clearly in your head. But at the same time, like, I could see her going out on Wednesday too. And I'm not sure I can say that about basically anyone else. I mean, even Angelina, I think, would at least last a few votes before she rubbed people the wrong way. Most of the people that we picked in the first or second round, I just don't really see them as early boots. But Natalie is someone who I'm low on. I'm just not really willing to take the risk because I don't see her as a possible winner. I think her absolute ceiling is probably like 5th or 4th or something like that, because I don't think you would ever let her get to the final tribal. I think she's too good at talking. And she's got too compelling of a story, and she would be too compelling of a winner, even though she's a Goliath. But I think that, it's just, she's really brash. She's really, really assertive in her interviews. And she does, I will say she has amazing reads on everyone in the cast. But I've been burned by that before. I don't know if anyone remembers someone named Simone Nguyen, but she had some really hot, scorching takes that led me to pick her in like the 3rd or the 4th round, and that did not go so well. So I don't think necessarily – I do think that if people have good vibes on you and Ponderosa, that is somewhat predictive. But I think that you having really dead-on, spicy reads on others is not necessarily predictive.
I think the best thing for Natalie, especially since I'm assuming there's going to be a swap at 2 or after 2 votes that'll bring it to 3 tribes, I think the best thing for her is that Mike White is on her tribe. Because I think that Mike White is somebody who everybody's going to look at right away. He doesn't look physically strong. Most people are going to know who he is. If they don't know who he is, it's going to come out that's who he is. And I think that really helps Natalie, because why would you not try to just get rid of that guy there? Like, why not? So I think that really helps with Natalie. And, I think Natalie, she's one of those people. It's kind of like what I said with Stephanie Johnson last season. If she can get past the first boot, she can start to fit in with people, and it can really work for her. And we saw Stephanie Johnson was very loud and, in all of her pregame stuff. And it was like, who is she going to annoy? And then she really did get along with her tribe. She didn't do well because she got stuck on the worst swapped scenario of all time. But, I do think that that's like the type of game I could see Natalie playing. Maybe like she's got to just make it through those first 3 days, and I think things will start to fall into place for her.
I certainly hope for the best for her. I ranked her really low in my rankings here and felt really bad about it. I really want her to succeed. I mean, I mentioned the thing about this sort of sexism of finding idols. I think I would be remiss if I didn't also point out that women of color just don't have a good track record on Survivor. If you were to map it out in terms of their average placement, it's horrendous. And we've seen that in recent seasons, and I think a lot of people have brought attention to it. And maybe, Survivor is just a microcosm of real life, and maybe this is just a racist country. But it, not to get all political, but it's an unfortunate reality. And so I think that you have to factor that in. It's just a really tough demographic background to come from, especially when you add on to the fact that she's the oldest person in the cast.
Well, and I think the thing, though, that works in her favor on this season is this is one of the most diverse casts by Survivor standards.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that really works in her favor, because we were talking about it. I don't know if it was with Adam or somebody, but it's one of those situations where when you get on the island day one, you're looking for any type of connection you can have with somebody.
Yeah.
Even if that just means, the color of your skin. That could be just the connection that you're looking for. Absolutely. And so I think that's why it's hurt women in the past, like Cece, who just never really even had a chance. But I think on this season, I think that there's a lot of people here who, like, she could work with maybe Jeremy. She could even use Jeremy. I feel like she could use Jeremy early on, because Jeremy will be more.
Sarita has Michaela.
Exactly. It'll be a bigger face to the entire thing. And I think it's like, hey, remember Jeremy? He's kind of annoying you, right? Vote him out instead of me. But she could also be like, Jeremy, aren't we best friends? Like, I could see that happening. So I just think that there's a little bit more going on here. And yeah, Alexa, like you just said, Sarita and Michaela, that's like a perfect example. I mean, that was, spot on.
Well, if we are going to talk about spicy, and if we're going to talk about scorching, we are going to go to Slamtown. I am taking Johnny Nitro as my 4th pick. I totally
flabbergasted. Totally thought you were going Natalia.
I am flabbergasted no one has picked him yet. I mean, it does make sense. He is the I would say the second celebrity of the season. I think Mike White is definitely more recognizable. People have pointed out Mike White instantaneously. Like, everyone's already calling him Ned Schneebly on the cast. This guy knows Survivor. Yes, he's athletic, but you look at him, he's not bigger than anybody else. He's extremely muscular, definitely athletic, but he's not like 6'7", 300 pounds of muscle. He's built, but he isn't as physically imposing as I originally saw. And Phil, you brought up a good point. I was originally scared of him because he's going to wear a jacket that says Mayor of Slamtown. He's not hiding the fact that he's on WWE. But then someone meets him and he tells them he's a WWE wrestler. I don't think everyone's going to be like, well, he's a bajillionaire. He's got to get out of here. So I think that does work for him a little bit. But his knowledge of Survivor is crazy. And I don't see him being the kind of person to want to just be this loud alpha male, control everybody. So I think he knows that won't work for him. When he was talking, I forget what the question was, but he answered a question with the Mike and Shireen relationship when referencing previous Survivor seasons. And that's not something that people would like immediately bring up. So it shows that this guy has a wealth of knowledge. He's comparing himself to Cochran. I think he's going to be super entertaining. And if he goes down first, that is fine. I want him on my team.
Yeah, I like Johnny Mundo. I think that he could have a very Cliff type experience on Survivor, but do better than Cliff because Cliff did get blindsided. But everybody liked Cliff, and everybody knew that Cliff was also a basketball player, but nobody cared. They just liked having Cliff around until Tony was like, wow, he's running this game. I need to vote him out now. And Tony was, a maniac. So, of course, he wanted to do it early. I think Johnny Mundo could do really well on the season.
Yeah, I agree. I like him. I think he probably has the lowest variance of anyone on the cast. Like, I absolutely see him either like being taken out right before the merge or shortly thereafter. And I don't really see too many other outcomes being super likely. You're not going to get rid of him early on if you're a Goliath. I mean, there may be a little bit of risk that he could become such a visible kind of avatar for the Goliath tribe that if the Davids somehow get the numbers on a post-swap tribe, then maybe the Davids want to take him out because he's been so obnoxious in the challenges or whatever. But I think ultimately he's probably going to be taken out somewhere around the merge because he's going to be seen as a threat. But I like him. I mean, I think that he's going to be like the heel of the season. He's probably going to lead the season in confessionals. I think he's really going to lean into playing the villain role. Maybe there's a little bit of downside with him being the LVP if the fans of the podcast really don't like how he's being edited. But I think that, he, as Mike said, he looks like he should be on the cover of an old lady romance novel, which I thought was a great line.
So accurate.
I know, it's really good. But he also has like more nicknames than anyone, which is awesome. He's got like Johnny Blaze, Johnny Impact, Johnny Nitro, Johnny Onyx, Wednesday Night Delight, right? I mean,
which will fit now.
Yeah, there you go. Wednesday Night Delight. Perfect name for the occasion. I think he is going to be a Wednesday Night Delight because I think that he is going to really lean into the villain role, and I think he's going to be like one of the best villains we've had in recent memory because if his hot takes in Ponderosa are any indication, he is going to be bringing the heat in the confessionals. But I actually see him a little bit more like a Brad Culpepper 1.0. I think he, even though I do think Brad Culpepper 1.0, this is a topic for a different day, was a little bit maligned by the edit. I think he played a better game.
Terrible edit. He wasn't a bad guy.
Yeah.
What is it? The funny 115 about him.
Yeah, the greatest thing ever.
Great funny 115 article. So yes, but as Brad Culpepper was portrayed in the edit, I think that maybe Johnny Mundo could get a similar edit where he's seen as sort of controlling his tribe out of the gate. He's not going to be just kind of some sort of voiceless behemoth. He's really going to be injecting himself into all the tribal decision making because he does know the game and he is a smart guy. But I think he's going to have a personality that rubs people the wrong way. And I think that when it comes to kind of the crucial merge dynamic, like as we saw in Heroes, Healers, and Hustlers, some of those healers people just didn't like them very much, like Joe. And so they ended up on the wrong side of the numbers because when the different alliances came together, they were really on the short end of the stick. I can see the same thing happening in Johnny Mundo where people are like, do I really want to be in an in-game alliance with this guy? He's kind of obnoxious. And I think that he also has a little bit of downside built in because of his physique, because as we know, the elements are going to play a huge role in this season, especially in the first few days. And I think that he's the kind of guy that's muscular, like Garrett, what's his name?
Adelson,
yeah. That, you know, if you have a very, very low body fat, you tend to really suffer with a lack of food. And then you add a lot of rain to that. And then you add someone who probably has a little bit of a temper and has probably built up a steady resistance to steroids. I think you could really have a combustible situation in the Goliath camp.
I love the comparison to steroids. But here's one thing I want to say, and I'm doing this off the top of my head. I didn't have this planned, but so maybe I forget somebody. But for athletes who have played on Survivor, Gary Hogeboom, Brad Culpepper, Grant and Steve back in Redemption Island, Jeff Kent, Cliff Robinson, like the one thing they all have in common.
What's his name from Co-Wrong?
Yeah, Scott Pollard. Okay, well, he's the bad one. Let's get rid of Scott Pollard. What I was going to say is the one thing they all have in common is they're all actually well liked. You always think that these people are going to come out there and like get voted out early because they have the money. Gary Hogeboom was really well liked, even by Danny, who he was like Danny's only ally, and Danny was like, "Oh, I hate you." Like,
yeah, but I know you also have John Rocker though, and you have Scott Pollard.
Yeah, but John Rocker's another one, man. You go back and watch San Juan del Sur. They egged him on so hard based on his.
He played it a lot cooler than I would have thought. He played it a lot cooler.
I mean, the only time he really lost his mind was when he said, "If you were a man, I'd hit you." That was the only time that he really lost his mind, because up until then, they were like calling him a racist and stuff. And I'm all about, if you're being called a racist on national TV, you have to defend yourself in some way, because that carries carries you with you your whole life, as we saw with him just being on the show, not doing anything wrong.
To be fair, I think he outed himself as a racist on national television well before that.
You're a Braves fan, you know all about John Rocker. Yeah, I'm saying,
as a anti-Rocker Braves fan.
You know, what I'm saying is he goes out there, he tries to work with Jeremy, they vote off Val, he really couldn't do anything about it, and it was instantly, why don't you go, I think Natalie literally says, why don't you go say something racist? And you're just like, oh God, and then that's when he yelled at her. Yeah. So I don't think he was really playing like an evil game, he wasn't being like a bad guy. Now like they all like him in real life, like Natalie and Nadia like hang out with John Rocker. Like,
well, so, I think Johnny Mundo is probably a good guy, and I think he can totally lean into that, as so many of those other good guy athletes are. But I think he's like a character, right? Like wrestling is different than almost any other sport that you're playing to heal.
He's a walking meme.
Exactly. Yeah. Like John Rocker wasn't playing a character. He was just trying to get people out. Jeff Kent was just trying to hit home runs. Scott Pollard was trying to get layups and get blocks. You know, he's not so much an athlete as much as he is an entertainer, right? He's an actor. Not to say that wrestling is fake. You know, you didn't hear that from me.
Don't ruin this for anyone.
Yeah. But yeah, I think first and foremost, he's like an actor. And I guess the ambulance means that Alexa disagrees.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I actually agree with all of this, and now I'm just annoyed.
No, it's okay. We can't even really hear it.
So yeah, I think, you know, I do think that John, like I'm hoping that he leans into the heel role. If he just like plays Mr. Nice Guy, which is probably what he's like in real life, then he will go further, but I think that the season will be more boring. I'm hoping that he really leans into the villain role. I think he will, and I think that's going to rub people the wrong way, but I think the confessionals are going to be 100.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to watch it.
While you guys make that choice, because now there's a boombox outside.
No, you're up.
I think it's me, right?
No, I just picked Johnny Mundo.
Yeah. I forgot. That was a long time talking about Johnny Mundo.
Yeah, well, he deserves it. He's a great casting choice, I think. But
yes.
So I'm going to go from Johnny Mundo to the other celebrity, and I'm going to pick Mike.
Okay.
I know you guys are low on him. You mean to wait on Alexa?
I am back.
I picked Mike. I'm picking Mike.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. You guys are really low on him. This is I think the one person who I'm really high on that you guys are really low.
I am confirmed very low on him.
Yeah, the counter one. I mean, you guys basically had like the same boot list or whatever. I think you clearly colluded on that. But you know, if y'all are high on Jeremy, or I guess Alexa's high on Jeremy, I'm low. This is like the reversal. I really think I think he was maybe my 6th overall pick.
Wow.
And he reminds me a little bit of another Mike that you guys were sleeping on that I was also able to get really late in the draft a few years ago, or 1 year ago. And that's Dr. Mike. But I really like this guy. I think that, like, yeah, he could go out early. Yeah, he may be the weakest Goliath. But if they're going to win some challenges, I think he's going to be safe early in the game. He knows the game really well. I think that he's self-deprecating. He's got the humor element. I really think he can make a little bit of a David Wright, Dr. Mike type run. I think he's got that upside. Yes, he has downside, but I think he's got a lot more upside than a lot of other people at this point in the draft. I also want to pick him because we have to credit him for the demise of Redemption Island in San Juan del Sur. I don't know if you guys have talked about this yet, but he was responsible for the fact that we didn't have Redemption Island make a comeback during San Juan del Sur, which I know, Phil, in the past, you've written some articles about like some what if scenarios in Survivor. That's one that I'd like to see, is like, what if one of the pre-merge boots, that was an illustrious pre-merge San Juan del Sur crew. What if one of them came back? What if Nadia came back? Does that mean that Natalie still wins? I don't know. So anyway, that's an interesting, but basically, like, apparently he was like having a meal with Jeff and was like, oh yeah, like Redemption Island blows. Like, don't do that again. And Jeff was like, oh, you don't like it? And he was like, nah. And so they took it out.
I love how that is the only way that Jeff figured out that people didn't like it.
I know, exactly. But no, I mean, I think, Mike has reality TV show experience, so he's definitely going to be good in the confessionals. I think you guys have mentioned before that it was probably somewhat of an advantage for Natalie and Nadia not to be sort of like completely taken aback by all the cameras in their face because they had been on reality TV before. I think he was, in his Amazing Race appearances, which I have not watched, apparently he was like, sharp, not super successful with the show, but definitely someone who was like decent at the little challenges they played, clearly a smarter guy. I think he was on the show with his dad, who was kind of older and sort of a little bit of hamstrung him a little bit, kind of a Wentworth Farm Guy 69 type scenario. But,
never forget that.
Well, speaking of which, maybe Kelly Wentworth would have had a coming out party even earlier if it wouldn't have been for Mike. But anyway, I really think he's got a lot of upside. I think he's a really smart guy. I think he's the kind of guy, if you don't get him out early, if you don't view him as a challenge that early, maybe you boot Natalie instead. I think he goes on a run because I think that he's smart. I think that he'll probably start trying to work with the super fans on the David tribe. And I think he could really go a long way. So I think you guys are snoozing on him, but I would not be surprised to see Mike in the finale.
You know what? The thing is with Mike White, I would love him to do well. I just don't see him doing well. Like, I would love him to stay.
I would love him to do well.
Yeah, like, I'm totally fine with it. Yeah, I think he's in a lot of trouble.
Like, I don't know why him being, like, everyone knowing that he's famous is necessarily going to hurt him. Like, I just don't see, like, being, oh yeah, you were on School of Rock, like, you got to go.
Back in 2003.
I just remember Jimmy Johnson. That's why I think of it.
Well, Jimmy Johnson he quit, right? He quit.
No, Jimmy Johnson got voted out. They literally
Marty like led that charge.
No. I think you need to go back and read some of like the sort of the rumors at the time. The rumor is that production hit it, but that Jimmy Johnson was trying to quit.
I have heard those rumors.
I think that's legit. So I actually think that Jimmy Johnson,
Marty was crazy.
I think Jimmy Johnson.
I don't think these are mutually exclusive.
Well, no, they're not. Marty was definitely crazy, but I think Jimmy Johnson actually was like asked to be voted out. I think this is like the sort of like low key sort of like rumor that's emerged from production people. I could be wrong.
So much good Nicaragua drama. You want to talk about Nicaragua content?
So underrated as a drama season. But anyway, no, I think Jimmy Johnson also way more famous than Mike White. I have to say, like, I have a decent passing knowledge of movies and television. I had to like look this guy up, honestly. Like I watched School of Rock. It was a long time ago. I really did not know. I didn't know Johnny Mundo either, but I really did not know this guy. So some people will know him. Some people will probably try to pull the sort of Hogaboom, Guatemala move where it's like, oh, I know who you are. Like, you better do what I say. Or
I saw the Emoji Movie.
Yeah, like Orange County, kind of a weird ending there, But I really think that his celebrity status is not necessarily going to be a nail in his coffin. And I think that in general, when you've got these older guys who are not super physically fit, but who know the game and who are really smart, I think they have a pretty good track record as long as they can avoid the first couple boots.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if he can get by, he can pull a David Wright and he can own it because he can just get in with the right people. And, he's a perfect person, I think, to take to the end where you say, oh, man, he's got so much money, don't put him. And you know what? He can also make the argument of who cares if I have so much money? We're all on TV now. We're all going to be influencers after this. We're all going to be millionaires. Come on.
Yeah, but he is by far the person who has the most to lose if they try to balance the challenges out early on. If they try to make it so the Davids have a little bit more of an advantage and Goliath ends up losing a couple of challenges, there's no way he survives the first couple of boots.
Yeah, I agree.
But if he does, if the Goliaths are able to pull off maybe one and they boot Natalie, or maybe someone's, causing a ruckus or whatever and they boot someone else, I think, why get rid of him after that point?
Yeah.
So I really think that he's a sharp guy. I think he's a funny guy. I think he's going to be fun to watch, and I really think he can go for it. Okay, second pick. I'm going to go with this guy. I'm actually surprised has not been taken. I understand what his downside is, but I think that kind of like Carl, I could see him floating by for a while, and that's Davey.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Pat.
I thought you were going to say Pat too.
Yeah, well, I can talk about Pat later. I think that people are going to probably compare him a little bit too much to the last winner they had seen. But with Davey, yes, he's got the downside of being a replacement cast member. Yes, that has not gone so well in the past, but usually when it doesn't go well, it's because it's like a returnee season. Like you had Candace come in and you had extensive pre-gaming beforehand. And that's why she was voted out, because unlike RC, she didn't have a pre-gaming situation. Here, it's like maybe Davey missed like 1 or 2 days of Ponderosa for people to like judge him for doing weird things while he's silently eating food. But like, I don't necessarily think it's necessarily a huge disadvantage for him. I think that he knew that he was going to be on a season of Survivor coming up. So obviously he prepared, mentally, emotionally, physically for it. Even though it's a little bit of a red flag, I don't think it totally gets me off of him. To me, the upside with Davey is, or the nice thing about Davey is that he's someone who I really think can relate to a lot of different people. He's a black guy who could maybe relate to the more diverse cast. But at the same time, he, identifies as a blurred, and he's got this like super dorky cosplay. He lists memes as one of his hobbies, which apparently is a thing you're allowed to do now. And so like I think he can relate to basically everyone on the cast. He's on a fairly nerdy tribe. I think I could see him bonding with Elizabeth or bonding with Gabby or bonding with Christian pretty effortlessly. But if he needs to sort of bond with a little bit more of the bro-y guys, I think he's charming enough and self-deprecating enough where he can do that as well. And I really, one thing we've seen on Survivor lately is really powerful alliances are sometimes alliances that go against type. When Ben aligns with Chrissy or Ryan aligns with Chrissy, Malcolm and Denise, sometimes those are the most powerful because people don't necessarily see them coming right away as alliances, and they're easier to hide. And Davey, to me, is a perfect example of someone who could align with someone against type. Maybe it's an older woman, maybe it's one of the pretty younger women. Maybe it's a guy who, like Christian, who you think is a nerd and who seems nerdier than Davey, and so people don't see it coming. But Davey, I think, just has so many different elements of his personality. He's going to be able to find something to talk to and relate to people on a lot of different levels. So I don't necessarily think that he has like the Survivor chops to win, and certainly he has a low floor because he's like a little goofy and he can be like a lot, and he could definitely kind of talk his way and be a little, talk his way out of an early exit. But I really like him, and I'll mention one other thing I liked about him. He was open in his interview with Josh Wigler about having depression, which is not something I have a whole lot of experience to firsthand, but I think it shows a level of vulnerability with him. And I think that some people that are as outgoing and as charming and as over the top as he is, sometimes the downside for them socially is that they're impenetrable. In other words, they're so gregarious you can't break under the surface. And in Survivor, a lot of times those kind of vulnerable moments like Adam had with Jay, for example, where you let people sort of see under your exterior can really make for bonding moments that make for great foundations of an alliance. And I think that Davey is someone who, if he's willing to admit in a pregame interview with Josh Wigler, someone who doesn't know about his depression, and speak really candidly and really emotionally about it, I think he's someone who can really hit him with the charm and hit him with the jokes at camp, almost like a Tyson-esque type thing, but then also have the ability to break it down with someone one-on-one and be vulnerable about who he is as a person and the challenges he's had to go through as being someone maybe who is, African-American, but who is also a cosplayer. So anyway, I like Davey a lot. I don't necessarily see him as a winner, but I think that he's got enough going for him where I could see him lasting a while.
He's going to be on your TV screen too every time he's there. So I think he has a lot of potential to be an MVP.
Yeah. And maybe he could find some idols. Yeah, he could find some idols.
I agree. I thought I would be able to get Davey later. He was one of the two people that I was hoping to get on the way back. But, I think Davey has a lot of potential. I think he has I don't think he can ever win the game, but I think that he can get far enough in the game where you're like, wow, that was worth it. He could get to Final 5. Like, why not? He could get to Final 3 and just be a GOAT at Final 3. Like, why not? Maybe he can connect with people, but I see him being sort of like louder, more in people's faces.
Yeah, you mentioned like Jean Robert. Yeah, you mentioned like Jean Robert with him, and I don't necessarily see that, but if you're right, then that could be a situation. I just don't see him as a target. Like, why waste a vote on him early on unless he's really getting on your nerves in the rain or something like that? To me, he seems like someone that's going to slip by, almost like Carl. But I think that he's got a little bit more of a game knowledge of Carl, that if he needs to make 1 or 2 moves at the end to propel himself, he's going to be able to do it.
Well, Carl's the winner, so.
Right. Yeah. That aside.
All right. So, Alexa, who are you taking here in your 5th round pick?
So I've been sitting in silence for the past few minutes because I cannot decide if I should go with someone who could easily be a first boot or getting myself into some TMZ business. And I think I'm going to go with the first boot. I'm going to go with Natalia. Not going to disclose who my TMZ choice would have been because they might still be here.
I thought Natalia was going to fall to me. Oh, man.
Nope, she's mine. I was burned by the Natalia type with Stephanie Gonzalez last season. I can't really remember what people's takes on her were in the Wiggler reports. I think they were kind of saying the same thing, like could seem high maintenance.
Yeah.
Not getting a great vibe from her. But I kind of like her. This is more just like now it's becoming a people who I like and people who could go far or could go past the first boot. I don't know. I mean, I actually don't even know if she's a fan of the show. I have not done a ton of research on it.
Yeah,
okay, fan of the show, that works for me.
She's a fan of the show, yeah.
Fan of the show, I think serviceably athletic. I think she is someone who could benefit from surviving the first vote, or she could benefit from the Davids losing that first challenge. I think she's just someone who needs to get her footing early. I'm reminded a lot of Ashley. Ashley did not do well in the preseason. Everyone hated her in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers.
Yeah.
She and Desi were at each other's throats because one of them made eye contact incorrectly, or someone took the wrong straightener. It was a whole thing. And I think Natalia is going to be like that, but look how loved Ashley was. Like, Ashley was hilarious, very well liked, made it super far. So I think Natalia has a chance if she has a couple days under her belt.
Yeah, I like getting Natalia this late. I would have liked to have had her. I thought I was gonna be able to sneak her on this at the end here. I was hoping you would have gotten into some TMZ business because I think Natalia has a lot of upside. Like, Vaughn, where are you at on a ceiling floor with Natalia?
I think that she is one of the last people left that I think actually could make a legitimately deep run, because she's like legitimately a smart person. And she's legitimately a fan of the show. And I think that combo this late is nice, especially when I think that she's going to be like decently athletic. The downside, though, is really steep. You know, I think she's one of the few people that could easily be first one out, right? I mean, and sadly, it goes back to the sort of woman of color thing. Stephanie Gonzalez is a good, angle, because she says up front, even though she's a fan, she says she doesn't know how she's going to play. Like, she doesn't really have a strategy. She hasn't thought through it. She admits that one of her weaknesses is like her bluntness, which is never a good sign. And so, I don't know. I think that maybe her upside is someone like Ashley, where she sort of hems it in, and maybe she like lets a few people like have it throughout the course of the season, but is able to sort of keep it in enough to where she's able to form good relationships. But man, I don't know. To me, she seems like she's going to be pre-merge. Also, I'll just note that this is not a good a way to get on my fantasy team. She says that the person she wants to emulate is Kelly Wentworth, who, despite my call out earlier, I think is, and this is a conversation for another day, an extremely overrated player.
There you go.
We got a whole podcast about that. I am like weird about Kelly Wentworth.
Kelly Wentworth is a very loved character, Vaughn.
She's extremely loved.
Her first season, and her second season, she had no target. It's very much Boston Robbish. I'm just throwing it out there, everybody.
I come here to bring the hot takes, and one of my hot takes today is that she's overrated, and
fastball has been thrown.
Natalia should be not brought down a couple of notches for even mentioning her name.
Well, you know what else too, Vaughn? You talk about like how people get voted out nowadays, and I think something that has started to hurt people, especially women on the show, is being really attractive. And Natalia is gorgeous.
Agree.
And I think that is going to hurt her so much, because look what happened with Libby last year.
Yeah.
She was good looking, and therefore she was the next Parvati. Like, that was
really
it.
Yeah. And she never she didn't do anything wrong.
It really is. I mean, that's why someone like Allison, who is an attractive person, but not as like not a model. Same thing like Kim Spradlin. I mean, or Natalie Anderson. Like, when you think about the women that just like absolutely grab the bull by the horns, I'm not trying to critique their physical appearance, but they were not brought on the show to fulfill the model beach babe archetype. And so that's why a Parvati type win is really unlikely. That's why I sort of laugh every time someone compares themselves to Parvati. Like, that's not a very like high probability move to try to play a Parvati game, because it hasn't happened very many times.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, going back to the archetype threat level, I think right now nerds are seen as really threatening. I think that moms are not considered very threatening. I think that hot people, hot women are considered threatening, because I think there's still a perception that like, oh, they're going to be manipulative, you know? And so it's unfortunate. But I think even the ones who are not trying to pull the whole Parvati using my looks to my advantage thing are labeled with that early on, and sometimes it's to their demise.
I'm surprised the Parvati comparisons haven't toned down yet. Like everyone, guys and girls, like there's 5 per season who say that.
And Parvati hasn't played in 17 seasons.
If you're a girl, you're Parvati, and if you're a guy, you're Cochrane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time.
I mean, Johnny Mundo, as you mentioned, I didn't mention how ridiculous this was, but like Johnny Mundo compared himself to Cochrane.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's hilarious. It's like, no, you're not Johnny Mundo. That was cute, but no.
I mean, people need to start picking just like really average people, you know, that just like are actually a much more reasonable person to relate to. It's
I
like,
would say I'm an artist type, if you ask me.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm really more of a Simone.
You're a big Simone guy.
Yeah.
Big Simone guy.
Courtney Yates in Heroes versus Villains.
Oh,
That's like what you need to say you are. Like I would stand there and I would be the beans to the pork. Like get out of here. Like there's no.
I would say I'm Chelsea. I would just go all in on the trolling.
And don't even say which Chelsea. Just say Chelsea. Any of the Chelseas.
Yeah, I see myself as kind of a Shambo type game.
Yeah, exactly.
Phil, finish off your team.
I'm gonna finish off my team. So I'll get into some TMZ business, I guess. And I'll go with Jessica. Don't think she can win, but she can Jeffrey the hell out of this thing and finish 7th place, and that's good enough for me as a 5th round pick. She could also be one of the first boots, but I think that really young girls do really well on the show in terms of distance. Maybe not in terms of how well they play, but they make it far. And we see that over and over and over again. She's only 19. She can lie about her age. She's going to be like unsuspecting. So I think Jessica can go pretty far. So I like having her. And then who do I want to take with my other pick? Let's find out. I am going to go.
You want me to give you a list of who's left?
No, I got it. I'm going to take Pat. Vaughn, I know what you said about like the last winner they saw is Ben.
Yeah.
But I think that Pat has some upside here, at least out of the people who are left.
Yeah, he was the highest person on my board, yeah.
Yeah, we know Alec and Kara are going to be a disaster, kind of like what you've said. B, we have not seen Asian women do very well on the show, so like I don't know, like it's hard to break out of that when like you look at it and you're just like, oh my god, the best one to play was oh my god, what's her name, Becky? Right, Becky was the best placer.
Becky got 0 respect.
And Becky got 0 respect when she got to the end. So like I kind of worry with that. I think B has a lot of potential. I'd like to see B do well on this season.
Well,
I think being in MMA,
PG I guess was pretty good.
PG was probably the best one, and it's interesting though when you watch. Well, PG and Sheehan are both interesting because when you watch them, their heritage plays into their seasons a lot.
Yeah,
and I think that's a lot of the reason why they got so much screen time. Like PG obviously was. You know, she had the great challenge throw and made it all the way to 5th place. And how the hell did she make it there? But a lot of her story was based around, I'm in China right now. This is amazing.
And let's not forget about Rob Goddess, Michelle Yee.
Michelle Yee, exactly. Falling off her perch.
She was on her way to a victory, and production decided they didn't want her to win.
Just shoved her off that perch.
Yeah.
So I think like that's like why I couldn't go with B there. And then Lirsa, you're wearing the shirt. So if anybody deserves Lirsa, it's you.
Touche. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think Pat is the obvious choice here. I mean, I think that he's a really sort of charming guy with such a great story. I really wish that I hope he's going to do well. And this is kind of like a Lauren Rimmer type pick, you know, where it's like, yeah, we're picking him low, but I think he could actually go on a decent run. But at the same time, he has the issue of being kind of a cultural fish out of water, and that always creates obstacles. You know, he could end up playing a little bit fast and hard. He also could be someone that maybe is kind of an avatar for the Davids if he comes off with a really strong personality and Jeff keeps asking him questions about like, oh, you tell us your background and yada, yada. He really could kind of become the avatar of the Davids and then maybe could be vulnerable in a post-swap situation. I think the biggest red flag for him is that people are way off on him in Ponderosa and comparing him to like Russell Hantz. Yeah, they're like, oh, this is Russell, or maybe this is Ben Driebergen. And so for me, I don't think he's a big enough fan to where he's going to be back to sort of like actual ability. I don't think he's going to be like amazing at playing the game, but he could be really overwhelmed early on if people are like, oh yeah, super nice guy, super big David, right? Like, do you own an oil rig in Texas, Russell? Yeah. You know, like you're not fooling us, you know? So I think he could be a victim of people being a little bit distrustful early on, and by the time he digs out of that hole, maybe he's missed the boat on creating some of the early alliances that are necessary to propel himself forward.
Yeah, I think all of that's fair.
And then Jessica, it's like, oh, yikes. Well, first of all, as a politician, I didn't necessarily want her on my team.
Figured you were going to avoid her like the plague.
Yeah. See, as just a podcaster who goes to grad school for writing and lives in Hollywood, I mean, this should have been my first pick, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think, at this point in the draft, right, we're all trying to strike gold, as I did last year, actually, with someone like Chelsea. Someone who didn't necessarily play a role in the season, was not necessarily a mover and shaker, but was able to survive and get those sort of like longevity points for your fantasy team. I think Jessica's as good of a bet as any of these sort of like, last round or second to last round people to do it. I think you're right that being young doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be early out. I mean, she's not going to be like a Michael Yerger. I think she also could struggle because, unlike Michael Yerger, number one, she's not used to acting like she's older. And number two, she doesn't look older. If anything, she looks younger. So I think those two things could maybe make it a little bit more challenging for her. And I think maybe emotionally, if her tweets are any indication from like 4 years ago or whatever, maybe she's a little bit more immature socially than someone like Michael Yerger was, who I think is, more mature than I will be at age 40. So, I don't think she's like necessarily if we had a fantasy draft of all teenagers, I think she might be in the last round of that too. But she's as good as a pick of any of these people in the last couple of picks to at least make like, 8th place because everyone forgot about her.
Yeah. No, I think that's why I keep saying Jeffra. That's all I keep saying.
Yeah. But also, I'll call her out just as I did with the Wentworth thing. She weirdly likes Steph LaGrossa, and she needs to get the hell out of here with that.
Yeah, Steph LaGrossa, I have my very strong opinions on Steph LaGrossa. So, yeah, we don't have to talk about Steph LaGrossa.
Emphasis on the gross.
Yeah, she was a very good player. Alexa, who's your final pick? You have a great 4 to choose from.
I'm going to take it home. I actually, if one were to dabble in the TMZ choices, I am surprised that my TMZ choice was not made. I am going with Kara. I think she is the obvious TMZ choice. And I guess I didn't have to pick a TMZer, but here we are. Kara did not want that photo posted. Just putting that out there. Alec did that without her consent. Alec posted that photo without her consent. I'm going to correct that.
Yeah, that's a good correction.
She is going to the finale. She is going to be there. She was fined and I don't even know if she was the one fined. Now I'm just like revisionist history here. But she like, I'm going to say she was caught in the act a little bit. Like she was kind of caught in the crossfire. Alec is the one who actually did this. Alec and Kara, I do not assume that they last very long. And this might be a little bit of guilt because everyone tells me that I hate Kara, which isn't true.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of like, no, look, I'm picking her last. I don't hate her. I don't know. I think, I actually think out of these remaining 4, she has the best shot to go far. I think she doesn't seem to have a particularly brash personality, which I think fits in with Allison in this tribe of Goliaths. And I don't know. I think she'll do fine for a last pick.
There you go.
I agree. I think honestly she's going to make the merge. I think that she may have gotten in a showmance with Alec, but I don't think that they necessarily were on the pre-jury trip together just because they took the photo together or just because they were in a showmance or whatever after the show. I think that she could make it a while, and I won't necessarily, brand her with the TMZ label. I think she may have been an unwitting participant. And she's got a really interesting bio. I mean, if it weren't for all the TMZ stuff, I think maybe she would have gone a lot higher because she's someone who was able to go from Chargers cheerleader to one of the most successful realtors in the country.
Exactly.
So it's like a Chelsea meets Yerger bio. And so, yeah, I think she's an impressive person. She's unlike Jessica. I mean, it's hard to believe based on looking at both of them, but Cara, I think, is 11 years older than Jessica.
Yeah. I know. That's what I was shocked at.
Yeah, which is crazy. And so I think maybe she's like a little bit more mature. I think maybe she can rein it in. I don't think she's going to be a main mover and shaker in the game. I think that she'll get probably a pretty negative edit, which is not necessarily going to give her a chance at sneaking out some MVPs. I also don't think that she's necessarily going to find an idol, but hey, she's got, women are increasingly winning some of those balance immunity challenge wins. She could do that. But I think I agree with Alexa that I honestly think she's going to have the most longevity of anyone who's here in the last round.
So you think she's better than Jessica?
I do, yeah. I think I like her. I like her chances better going to the merge than Jessica. Despite the whole teenager thing, I think that she seems like a more impressive person. I think if we didn't have the TMZ bias sort of overhanging, I think we'd say, hey, this is someone who turned in sort of a cheerleader career into like a really legitimate realtor career. She's older, she's sharp, she's bubbly. Whereas Jessica, I don't know. I just don't think Jessica's got a whole lot going for her.
It's the same thing that happens with like pro sports, where like right before a draft, all of a sudden something comes out about somebody, an accusation that may or may not be true.
Right,
and then it turns out that it wasn't even true, and that the person, whatever, but they fall in the rankings because you're just like, well, I'm not going to touch them.
Yeah, it's a personality, blip discount.
I'll tell you what, if that had never come out, I would have taken Alec a long time ago, and I probably would have tried to take Kara a long time ago. And I think that Lyrsa and B would have been the two people who would be sitting there at the end. I think that would have been who it was. And I think that everybody else would have. I think it would have been an easy two to not pick, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Alec, that, our reticence to take him is justified because he's been banned, we know not only that he's going to get a terrible edit, but he couldn't have possibly wanted to give up his winnings or risk that with his social media habits if he had done well. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that necessarily extends to Kara. So I think maybe Alexa got a nice little discount on her. And I think she really could be someone who ends up, 6th or 7th place, which, in the last round, that's exactly what you're shooting for here.
So Alexa's best pick was her 6th pick, is what you're saying.
There it is.
Well, it's better than the Jeremy pick. Better than the Jeremy pick. That's all I'm going to say. I don't really remember who her other picks were. I mean, the hot cop pick, I think, was, that was good. Allison in the 2nd round, even though I trashed Allison for like 15 minutes.
You eviscerated Allison.
Yeah, I think, honestly, like, she could even be the steal of the draft. I think she's like someone who really could win, and getting her in 2nd is solid.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Vaughn, take us home.
Jeremy remains terrible. Okay, so... So, this is I think pretty straightforward given the shirt I'm wearing. I have to go with Lyrsa. And it's definitely true that she could be the first boot. I am not necessarily a fan of anything but her sartorial decision-making. I do think that she is a really interesting person. I think that she's vibrant, magnetic. I think that if she avoids an early target, maybe if the Davids are able to string some wins together early on, because she is really outmatched physically. But I think that if she's able to survive the first couple of boots, because maybe the challenges are skewed a little bit more toward the Davids, maybe she can stick around. I'm certainly not going to pick Alec. I think I'm throwing Bradley a bone a little bit and giving him B, because I agree. I think that in reality, I think that maybe she has a better shot. But B has some red flags too. I think that anytime you try to binge Survivor really, right before you go on the show, I think that can really give you the wrong lessons. I actually think maybe it's better to go in completely cold than to just binge a couple of seasons, because then I think it really skews your perspective. Also, she recapped season 35 really weirdly. I don't know if you guys heard that, but she was and everyone was just doing whatever Ben wanted them to. And it's did you actually watch the show? Ben was having to find idols every time because no one was doing what he wanted to do. So I think that, and this is sort of my general philosophy, I think there's a huge difference in being a fan and really soaking in the episodes, listening to great podcasts like this one, and really kind of making a study of the show, as opposed to just kind of watching it really quickly right before you go on. Desi tried to do that. There's a long history of recruits that are oh yeah, I feel I know the show pretty well because I binged 18 seasons in 3 days. But I feel you're just really, something is lost in translation when you do that. And so B, I feel really could kind of be hurting. That said, I do think, given her physicality, she's more likely to survive the first couple of boots than Lyrsa. And so I think maybe I'm throwing Bradley a bone and making it a little bit more competitive.
I agree. I think B is actually somebody I would have thought would have gotten picked, but I guess we all had different feelings on who the bottom two were. I probably would have maybe avoided Kara just anyway, but that's just me. And I probably would have avoided, I don't know. I didn't want Lyrsa. I didn't want Kara, and I didn't want Alec. So those were 3 people I was as long as I had the 3rd pick, I knew I wouldn't get any of them, which was another thing where I was I don't want to be stuck at the end. I figured those would be the last 3 people. So I didn't know who I would take.
What's odd and interesting about Alec being last is he's probably not the first one who goes home.
No.
You know?
Yeah, right.
And
right.
the other two very well could be. So I'm a little surprised that Alec wasn't picked in the last round, just because in the last round going for longevity. And Alec could be the last person before the merge.
Well, I think it's just a ceiling situation, right? Because I'm positive he's pre-merged. So yeah, you're right that maybe his floor is not first one out, but his ceiling is like, fifth one out.
Yeah.
So whereas I think Lyrsa, she's probably got like the highest chance of anyone maybe of being the first one out. But if she doesn't go in the first couple boots, like who's to say that she's not 8th place?
Exactly. No, I think that's a great point. So let's just run through the teams real quick. Do you guys remember your teams, or do I have to read them all?
I have them all written down.
I got them too.
Okay, cool. So Vaughn, you want to go first since you picked first?
Sure. So you want me to name all 6?
Yeah, just run down your list so everybody can have
I picked Nick first, who I think in real life would be a buddy of mine. I'm high on him. I picked Angelina, the winner of Survivor Season 37 in the Steal of the Draft, with my second pick in the late second. I then followed it with Elizabeth Yeehaw Olsen, who is not necessarily going to win, but it's going to be awesome to watch and fun to root for. And then I had, I think, the best turn of the draft when I went Mike White, who you guys are completely slumbering on, followed by Davey, who I think is a really intriguing guy who I hope does well. And then I ended it all off with the first boot of the season, Lyrsa, who has a great shirt.
Who has a great shirt. So I start with Hot Cop from Gainesville, Dan. I picked someone who lives where University of Florida is, but we're going to move past it.
Oh, and by the way, Nick went to Alabama Law School. So roll tide.
Oh, so you are the same person.
Yeah.
There it is.
Sorry for interrupting, but that was an important aside.
Very important. So I start with Hot Cop, University of Florida fan. Huge assumption there, Dan. I go with Hero, Healer, and Hustler, Allison. And then I go with the winner of every season for the rest of time, Jeremy C., not to be mistaken for Jeremy Collins. Then I go with the mayor of Slamtown, Johnny Nitro. I go with Stephanie Gonzalez, crossed out with a red pen, Natalia. And I end with TMZ Queen, Kara.
And then
I would say she's the TMZ princess. I think that Jessica is probably the queen.
Jessica has her own article.
Or she's the prime minister, if you will.
Yeah, she's
Angelina. Yeah.
The sinister prime minister. My first pick, I went with Gabby, who's the winner. And then I took Christian round 2, even though he works at FSU, which I didn't bring up. I really should have brought that up.
We can't support people who support that university.
Christian's definitely getting 20th place, but I took him second. That's why I was wearing glasses the entire time.
He got dinged. He got dinged by me too because he left Maryland. He's a native Marylander and he left
to move to Tallahassee.
Yeah, I know. So he's trash, but great prop though. Great prop.
Dead trash.
Yes. The glasses were huge. Then I got Carl the Big Sleep, which is another. I love it because he is the sleeper of this season. And then I got Natalie, who is obviously going to get 5th place on this season. I have the questionable tweeter herself with Jessica, and I have the reason for David versus Goliath in Pat Ben Driebergen. I don't know what Pat's last name is.
Emphasis on questionable with the tweets.
Yeah, questionable tweeter. You know what? I haven't read all of her tweets.
There are a lot of good people on both sides. Some people say they were good tweets. Some people say they were bad. That's the question.
My God. Okay. Anyway, so Vaughn, thank you for coming on, Alexa. Do you want to take us home? And now that we finally have this whole thing, we got our 3 teams, and we only have 3 days until the premiere.
And Bradley, best of luck.
That's right.
Bradley, yeah.
Bradley stupidly selected B and Alec. I don't know why he did that.
Yeah, what a loser.
Let's see how it works out.
Anyways, I'm going to take us home. This finishes off the preseason for us. So next Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. This is super exciting for me because I'm going to get a good night's sleep on premiere night. We will be live with our premiere recap. We're going to have a couple interesting changes in October that we'll get to later. But for now, we'll be back in 3 days. We're finishing off the preseason. In the meantime, make sure to submit your boot list. We've been getting a lot of asks as to when they need to be done. Try to get them in by tomorrow night. I'm going to say Monday night. I really don't want to be intern doesn't want to be putting these in Wednesday morning. So Monday night boot list, you're done. Monday Night Prop Bet, we're done. I'll tweet out that little poll as to which of the 4 of us has the best teams, because that usually determines the winner. Whoever people think has the worst fantasy team usually ends up winning the fantasy game. So I'll tweet that out. And speaking of questionable tweets, if you like weird tweets, follow Survivor Specialists on Twitter. Like us on Facebook.
Are we doing Eliminator?
Oh,
that's right.
Dear.
Look at Vaughn saving the day.
Oh, man, I just have to be the co-host here.
Okay.
Wow, Vaughn just saved the day. Well, we'll get into why we. Yeah, see, it's weird because me and Alex haven't thought about it because
I can do my Eliminator right now. Yeah, I got him.
Okay, good. I'm going to do Johnny Monday.
I got Alec.
Ooh, Alexa going with Alex. Yeah, I would have went with Alec, but now I can't. I don't want to have us both doing Alec. That wouldn't be any fun.
That'd be a lot.
I will do. It's just one boot, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll do Pat.
So Vaughn, you picked Nitro, Phil, Pat, Alexa, Alec. Yay! Great reminder. What else do I have?
I do what I can. The Goliath.
It just triggered my Alexa, which means it's time for me to sign off. You have to turn her off. Last things last, subscribe to us on YouTube. We got like 200 subscribers in this preseason, which is super exciting. So keep spreading the word, keep telling your friends, and we'll be back Wednesday for the season premiere of Survivor David vs. Goliath.
Oh, I have to stop.